It's KTN Sunrise Live, and we continue with this part of the show where we speak to people in the know. Today is the 8th of November 2012, and joining me once again is Professor Nzioka Muthama, who is the chairman of the Kenya Meteorological Meteorologists, I should add. And he, among other things, is also the chairman of the department, or the chairman of the Department of Meteorology at the University of Nairobi. And he's here to talk about issues pertaining, the environment, and also what we need to know about, climate change, the changing weather patterns in Kenya, and lots other issues. But also key to note is that there's going to be an expo, a climate change expo, and he's going to be delving into those issues there. But would like straight up to get to him as he talks about several issues. Remember, you can ask any question pertaining to climate change, pertaining to the changing weather patterns in Kenya, using our SMS line 8040, or you can tweet us at KTN Kenya. That is our Twitter handle, and we'll be able to reach out to you and what exactly you have to say about this. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
Good to have you in the studio.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we will just find out, what does climate change actually mean, if we are to look at simple terms for people who might not exactly pay much attention to climate change?
Yes, thank you. Climate change really affects every one of us. Mm-hmm. And in simple terms, it's basically having the rains at the due time. All of us need rain. We need water. At whatever station in life we are in, mm-hmm. rainfall is very important. So having it at the right time is having climate the way we know it. If there is change, when rains come at the wrong time, that is climate change. And really that affects all of us.
Right. Now, clearly putting it so every Kenyan has understood, having rains at, due time. And if we have it at a time when we do not expect, then that is definitely climate change. Now, what role does human nature play in terms of affecting climate change?
Yes, climate is affected by all activities that are going on, mm-hmm. whether in the atmosphere, in the air, or even on the land, mm-hmm. even at sea. So whatever things that we are doing affect the rains. And one of the important things about rainfall is that because it comes from the clouds and it is connected to trees, as we know. So any activities that interfere with crops, for example, we are talking about deforestation, for example. Mm-hmm. Any activities that interfere with the environment the way we know it, it will certainly affect the rains. And that requires us to think deeply about how to ensure that we conserve the environment. If we want to get the rains at the proper time, then there are things each one of us must do. If I cut one tree, I need to know that it will affect me at a later stage in life in terms of what I am expecting in terms of the water available for me to use for my household.
Well, if you look at the environmental conservation levels in Kenya, one would actually pose too many questions that you would not find answers to. And as the chairman of the Kenya Meteorological Society, one would actually say that there are so many challenges that are also associated to the National Environment Management Authority pertaining to climate change, and how maybe they have not enforced certain laws that could maybe curb some of the human nature, disturbances to climate. And as the chairman of the Meteorological Society, I would like to know, how would you rate Kenyans' level of conserving the environment?
Yes, internationally we are not ranked poorly. Mm-hmm. And this is actually an interesting area, because we will start with the Nobel laureate, mm-hmm. Professor Wangari Maathai, yes. as a start. So on the global map, in terms of environmental conservation, individual professional efforts have been recognized. In the Nobel Prize that was given in 2007 for environmental conservation regarding climate change, some of Kenyans who were involved in the studies about climate change were recognized for that effort by the so-called Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Mm-hmm. So we have at professional level recognition. From the Kenya Meteorological Society, 5 of us, including myself, were actually recognized globally for contribution towards conservation of the environment. So we have activities, and I think this is an area where we can actually give something to the world. As much as we, as a nation, we have an opportunity actually to make a contribution regarding conservation of the environment. So at professional level, that has happened. What about at personal level, at household level? Probably this is an area whereby much needs to be done, and probably what is the end point? It's the awareness. And I really am grateful for this opportunity, because for every viewer, you have a role, I have a role to play in terms of conserving the environment.
Let's get into that. For instance, what do we have to do to conserve the environment? We know that Professor Wangari Maathai had quite a big legacy, with how environmental she was. But if we're looking at it at an individual level, a household level, what do we need to do to conserve the environment?
I will start addressing each household. When I go around the country, I hear people tell me, when I was young, the environment was much better. Now it is not.
Yes.
And the question really is, if all of us are actually responsible for the degradation of the environment, because each one of us knows, because everybody tells me, when I was young, I used to see the Nairobi Dam look much better. I used to see the Nairobi River very improved. I used to see many trees. So this means I need to be conscious, you need to be conscious of how you can improve the environment. And just like Wangari Maathai had some of the virtues that she upheld, the question that comes to mind is, each one of us needs to ask themselves, how many trees, for example, or how much greenery have I contributed to increasing? Be it a flower, whatever it is. Am I just responsible for degrading it, or I am also contributing to increasing the greenery? So each one of us has got a role. It's not a question of, maybe you may say, I may not have land now. But there are organizations that may require people to volunteer to go and plant trees. We are aware, in fact, as you have mentioned about the expo, some organizations have come and they have said, we have these tracts of land. Do we have volunteers who would want to come and plant trees? So we also need to get people who may want to give the seedlings so that we can make a contribution. So there's a role for each one of us.
I understood. One of the issues that is really disturbing about, stakeholders who come forward with all these proposals of, I have about 10-acre piece of land, and by the way, I need pine trees, I need these. You can actually see that the end result is they want to use it for commercial purposes. And maybe in a way or another, one would look at that as manipulating, the environmental bodies in a country or, say, a specific continent. What would you say to that?
I would probably look at it in a slightly different way, because good people are known by their legacy, what we leave behind for the next generation. So irrespective of the objective, if we say that 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, this will be the first place on the world where somebody wants to come and see the beauty of the environment, whether there was initially what was thought to be some manipulation, so long as we have contributed to enhancing the environment, we will have made a contribution. I agree with you, there could be cases, but those can be checked. And there are many well-wishers out there, people who are well-meaning. There could be a few, and those ones, I believe, they can be filtered out. But if we consider, as we talk about Vision 2030, think of a city, a mega city of Nairobi, a hub that is also a tourist attraction in terms of environment, an eco-city, whereby somebody from out there, they will come and they say, wow, this is the city where I want to live in. And this requires each one of us to start the process now. Of course, it's a long-term thing, but it starts from now, from each one of us.
That's right.
What is it that you are going to do? What is it that I'm going to do?
And what does what I'm going to do entail? Because, some people, when you talk about environmental conservation and mitigating the effects of climate change, some people would actually think it only requires, I just need to plant a tree and then that's it. That's all I need to do to conserve the environment. Some people would probably think I do not need to dump. What other versions of environmental conservation would you put out there so people can actually understand that environmental conservation is far more beyond just planting trees and, just making sure they do not dump, organic substance, all over the streets?
Yes. You know, when we talk about conservation of the environment, we are talking about, I started with the air. So to have clean air, to have quality air, that is conservation of the environment. So any facility that is interfering with the quality of air, that already is an issue. Yes, be it vehicles, be it industries. Yes, so that, to start with, there is need for awareness. Whether we are talking about the environment inside one's home, because it can be affected by what is happening along the street. So the awareness is important. And you see now, quality air translates to quality health. Because if we are breathing in air that is not of good quality, that already is a problem. So we need to be aware of it. So one of the key things that we need to know is that the first thing is that there is need for monitoring. In fact, when we talk about climate change, one of the important things is to monitor, to know what is the situation. So the question I want to pose now is, how much do we know about the air quality in wherever we are? Be it the city of Nairobi, be it the city of Kisumu, Mombasa. Are we talking of Eldoret? Do we even know the quality of the air? That monitoring is important. So if we don't know, then we already have an issue. So,
well, let me ask the question, do you know the quality of the air that you breathe in whichever environment you are? You can also share with us. And by the way, ask Professor Nzioka any question you have pertaining climate change, pertaining the changing weather patterns. Our Twitter handle is KTN Kenya, and our SMS number is 8040. Would definitely like to hear from you and see just about how much you know about environmental conservation in Kenya, and how much you as an individual have done to conserve the environment, and what you think we need to do to improve on mitigating the skirmishes of global warming in the world, and particularly in Kenya as well as Africa. Now, let's get back now to issues here pertaining to the changing weather patterns in Kenya. We know that we have specific peaks of rainfall in Kenya, and when rain comes at a time you do not expect it, you would actually think otherwise. What is wrong with us? Is this global warming? Is this, we actually do not understand, because even the Meteorological Department would say starting the 1st of October, we are going to be experiencing El Nino rains. Then half the month of October, we are seeing very high temperatures, even going over 30 degrees Celsius. And this actually leaves people confused, because they're like, okay, we expected some rains around this time, and now what we're seeing is high temperatures and with sharp sunshine, with maybe, I could say, affecting rays on the human body. So how would you explain the weather patterns and how much they have changed from the time when you say, maybe when I was growing up, Kenya was like this, but now, it rains all the time, or it shines, and when it shines, it really shines so bright. How would you explain the changing weather patterns?
Yes, the studies which have been done about climate change indicate that particularly for us here in Kenya, the impact of climate change is by way of getting extreme weather events. So we have been, the frequency of extreme events, be it heavy rains or even lack of rains, the frequency has been increasing. 40, 50 years ago, you are talking of a drought after every probably 4 years, on average. And excess rainfalls also after about 4 years. Now we are seeing 1 year you have excessive rainfall, the next year there is no water at all. So one of the challenges with the climate change is that erratic nature of the weather, the way we know it. So this part of it can be attributable to climate change. But I also want to quickly mention that weather always varies. So I'm not talking about the variability, because even when there is no climate change, you would expect some variability because of various activities that affect the rainfall. But now we are seeing extremes, as you rightly say. You are in the middle of a very hot sunny day, and then you get heavy downpour.
Exactly.
And shortly after, it also becomes very hot.
Very hot.
These are the extremes that are projected to come with climate change. But the good news is that we can actually do something. Of course, I need to point out that weather does not have boundaries. As much as we talk about Kenya, we need to know that we are in a global village. And anything that is happening, even in Europe, is affecting us. And that awareness is important. so that we know that we, as much as we can do the much we can do as Kenya, we will also be affected by other countries. And that's why we cannot live in isolation. We need to interconnect, especially regarding the environment. But what is the best way for us to do is to do our part. And I'll give an example. You know, Kenya is termed as a water-scarce country. Water-scarce country. But when you look at the heavy rains that we experience, and all the water disappears,
True.
then yeah, these are issues that, yes, I know the government is doing much, but there's much more that can be done, not only by the government. We also have the entrepreneurs. We also have the ordinary citizens. We can actually do something. I think one of the issues that we would want to see is for us to be aware that we can actually contribute. A good example, like the last 1 week, the amount of rain that we have experienced in the country
Destructive
is destructive rain. But that water, if it's harnessed, it will make a lot of difference for several years. Do we need to be talking about the same thing over and over again? Do we need to have estates in the city of Nairobi where there is no water, when a lot of water has just gone down the drain? And these are the issues that I believe as citizens we need to think about and consider so that we can make a difference. I believe we have an opportunity to make this nation an outstanding nation in terms of environmental conservation.
Right. We have someone called, I guess it's called Oker Tobias, and he's asking a question. Professor, what do you say about the argument that we should reduce our population growth rates to save the environment and fight climate change? That's on Twitter.
Yeah, thank you, Tobias, for that question. I believe environmental conservation may not have much to do with population growth. It has much to do with individual responsibility, because you can have 10 people who are cutting down 1,000 trees per day to export them, but you can have 1 million people and each person has planted 3 trees. So it is not really an issue of population growth. Yes, I would see it as the awareness of personal responsibility in terms of what I need to do for the environment.
So you're saying population growth has nothing at all to do with the effects of climate change?
I would put it like this: irresponsible population growth. You are talking of a population that doesn't care about environment, then there is a big threat.
Well, let's take a scenario where we're seeing, the population growing is in a certain village that maybe has had a forest reserve, and because the population is expanding at a very fast rate, we see some of the trees being cut down, and in this case, we will actually see that the environment is being degraded because people are cutting down trees for settlement. Don't you think that this is also a way of affecting climate change, or would you term that as irresponsible population growth?
There are two issues here. When you talk about population growth, really, we need to look at environment in an integrated way, because there's need for rural and urban planning. Yes, we have it, and we need to project. We say that in the next 50 years, 30 years, if the population will be this much, what will be the optimum way of us inhabiting Kenya so that we can have an optimum environment suitable for us? That needs to be in place. When it is not in place, then things will be chaotic, as you have mentioned. So I think in terms of the planning, in terms of preparedness, in terms of willingness for us to make adjustments, because some of them require adjustments. If the population is growing, there are adjustments that we may probably borrow even from others. Are we thinking about urban centers as the places where we can have all the amenities, and we reserve some places for environmental conservation and so on? These are issues that need to be addressed.
Right. I would like to bring your attention to, some of the issues in regard to settlement here. We have quite a number of people who have settled in wetlands, and you would say that these are areas that in one way or another do help, conserve the environment and, stop some of these really extreme effects of global warming. Now, when it comes to issues like that, and we are seeing also the key policy decision makers being involved in issues like these. Maybe we're having some of the government officials buying out land in wetlands, and this comes to a point where nobody can question them because they are actually policy makers. And despite the fact that they're policy makers, they're still breaking the law, occupying land in a wetland. How would you react to that?
Yes, I think I agree with you. This has been a challenge. And I would see one of the gaps is actually at the level of individual citizen. And I will use this example of Professor Wangari Maathai. There was this time when the Uhuru Park was supposed to be converted into some building, and she personally, together with her team, made an effort to ensure that we can see Uhuru Park the way it is today. So I believe there is a role for the civil society, for the individual citizen to make a contribution. If I see an entrepreneur going into a wetland that affects me, affects my community, there is something that I need to do. Yes, the government is doing much, but there is also a contribution for each one of us. And I believe that is the way we need to go. Because when citizens speak, things will happen. And I think that is very important for us. The awareness needs to come up much higher. If it is much higher, you find somebody cutting a tree, the tree is 50 years old, you may not stand it. You will want to know why should it be cut. Yes.
Well, I have quite a number of questions that are coming through here, and someone here is saying, I'm a farmer and I depend on rain to grow crops. My question is there El Nino this time round? This is coming in from Stephen Mutua. And, well, I don't know what you'd like to say to that, because he's confused. The Meteorological Department recently announced El Nino rains, so he's asking, are the rains we're experiencing now the El Nino rains, if I got his question right?
Yes. Maybe just to interpret what probably his question, his concern, his desire, is that he would want to have sufficient rainfall for his crops. Now, for me to be concise,
yes,
it would be useful to know where he's doing the farming, because El Nino has got different effects for different localities. And I believe that information he can very quickly get from Kenya Meteorological Department. They will be happy to give him the information. But I want to state that El Nino basically means the oceans warming up, like the Indian Ocean. When we have warm oceans, then we get more rainfall. And El Nino has got categories. There's a weak El Nino, there's a moderate El Nino, and there's a strong El Nino. Many times, some people I meet, when they hear El Nino, they think of the very heavy rainfall.
Yes.
I wish to confirm that the oceans are warm, and when the oceans are warm, you expect more rainfall. And we have seen this in the past 1 week or so. You are talking of records of 50 millimeters of rainfall per day in some places, or even 100 per day. But the question, he can actually get help. If he calls Kenya Meteorological Department, he will be given exactly the forecast that he needs. And I think this is another important issue that probably at least viewers may want to take advantage of. You can actually call the Kenya Meteorological Department. It is your right. And you request to get specific information, because sometimes the forecast may be given in a general way. Because even when we are talking of heavy rains, there are some places where the rains may not be that heavy, and that forecast is given. But somebody can get that advice. I'm sure he will benefit from that information.
I think this is the kind of awareness that we need. We're having we're having Ndila from Mutwapa who is saying the media should ensure such conservation or such conversation that reaches the people who actually need it, because I believe the media can advocate for change in Kenya, and I guess this is something concerning the unitedness to environmental conservation. But we're having Charles Ayoma who is saying, environmental science lecturer, I would like to ask the mitigation and adaptation techniques to climate change that the government is seriously undertaking in Kenya.
Yes. Now, just to mention briefly, when we talk about climate change, there are 4 things. One of them is to monitor, because we need to measure and see what is happening. The second one is to understand why it is happening. It's called attribution. The third one is the mitigation, what he has mentioned. And the mitigation is basically the laws and whatever regulations that the government has put in place. And the government has done a lot. There's the National Climate Change Response Strategy that is involving what we need to do as Kenyans, and there are very many things that are happening for all the different ministries. Then adaptation strategies are addressed in that National Climate Change Response Strategy. This adaptation strategy, and the document is actually available, it can be downloaded from the internet, and I believe if somebody is interested in it, one can get it from the Ministry of Environment and the Mineral Resources.
That is, so they need to visit the Environmental Ministry website.
Yes,
Great.
and they will get that information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we have John who is saying, can you advise on the way forward and enlightening people on the use of energy-saving cooking stoves here in Kisumu to help in the low emissions of carbon dioxide to the environment?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that's another very important area, especially the energy sector. You know, trees are cut down because somebody doesn't have another way of getting fuel. And we are happy that entrepreneurs, we have talented Kenyans who have come up with technologies whereby you can actually reduce the emissions by a large percentage. You are still using a cook stove, you are using charcoal, for example, but you can use probably 40% of what you have been using by way of the cook stove. And one of the opportunities that we are giving, that's why we have the Expo. We have people who are the leading people in terms of the climate, we call it climate smart technologies, so that we can see which one is the best cook stove. And in fact, we'll even be giving awards to the best stands. Somebody who shows that this will really contribute to improving the environment. So right. This particular expo, which will be at the KICC on the 13th to 14th, will help highlight these issues. But the question is certainly very important. I believe the person can also get in touch with the Kenya Meteorological Society. We can link them up with people who are playing some role in terms of the cook stoves. There is a lot that we can do as Kenyans.
There are quite a number of questions here. I hope we can make time to have them all answered. Lillian from Nairobi is asking, what measures are you taking as a department to balance the climatic changes and its effectiveness to the environment in terms of accuracy if the weather patterns are not in the state of equilibrium?
Yes, that again is a very important question. The contribution here is really for all of us. Not one person. And one thing we need to know is that the consequences we are experiencing now are because of actions which were taken many years ago, 30, 20 years ago. And continue to still be taken. Continue, and we are accelerating those. So if we decelerate, if we turn around the things that we have been doing that are harming the environment, we need to start now so that we can start changing. Of course, this requires because the quality of the prediction, one of the key things is monitoring. I know the government is doing a lot, but much more needs to be done in terms of the monitoring. Because if we do not monitor, we cannot even tell what is going to happen tomorrow. So the monitoring, again, is important. We need equipment. And I need to quickly mention that if we look at where we are heading, especially with respect to Vision 2030, for us to really be a strong economy, what have the strong economies done around the world? They invest heavily in monitoring the environment. Satellites up there for weather alone. And this is the way we need to go, because we may not want to rely on others all the time. And this requires all the citizens to see the importance of it, so that the leaders we have can see the importance of this, because this makes a lot of difference.
Right, and we have Aroko from Thika who is saying, why are the big companies allowed to influence policies like the Shamba system and private investors as we await a devolved system? Well, I don't know, maybe this question can be referred to the Ministry of Environment, but if you're in position to answer it, I actually think that it could be best directed to them. But please, if you're in position to answer it.
Joy, you are right. That is the best place where they will get the response. But I want to point out to him that he can also influence policy.
Yes.
There are usually opportunities for stakeholders meetings, and they are usually in the papers. When all these policies are being made, this information is communicated to all of us, so that anybody who wants to make a contribution can do so. But
Right.
I'm sure that can be addressed from the ministry.
Okay.
Yes.
So can we say that the policymakers who are in charge of environmental conservation have failed in their duties? Because one thing that we are seeing here is that we have environmental laws through the National Environment Management Authority, and we have people who are meant to implement these laws. And, we have a Ministry of Environment in the country, and yet we still see environmental degradation continuing at a very skyrocketing rate. Do you think the policymakers have failed in their duties?
My quick response would be a clear no.
Yes.
Indeed.
Why is that?
My presence here, for example, is because of the support of the Ministry of Environment and Mineral Resources. We have gotten consistent support from that ministry as a society, the Kenya Meteorological Society. And the reason they are doing this is because they recognize that we can play a role in terms of creating awareness. And indeed, even the expo is supported very strongly by the government. The Office of the Prime Minister, the Ministry of Environment and Mineral Resources, and other companies are supporting this. So out of this, we are bringing in ministries, line ministries, to come and talk to the public about these issues. The interaction is the one that we need, the policymaker and the citizen, so that we can find improvements in terms of what is happening. I agree there's a gap in terms of awareness creation. And this is where we want to meet it. Probably what is happening is that citizens need to be more aware of the policies available, and so that everybody can also support the government in the efforts that we are doing.
Okay. Now, let's quickly delve into this Climate Change Expo that we are going to be having, like you mentioned, on the 13th and 14th of November. Could you just highlight some of the issues that are going to be discussed, and where it's going to take place, and what we need to know in order to attend it anyway?
Yes, thank you. This is an expo. It is dubbed Save the Earth Expo. And the main theme is basically to equip ourselves so that we can build capacity to shield against climate risks, so that we can get resilience, so that when we have these risks, we are able to take advantage of whatever is happening. Like the example of the rains. When we have the heavy rains, we should take advantage of it, because from the predictions, because we are talking of extremes, now we talk of heavy rains, tomorrow we'll be talking of lack of rains. I'm not talking of tomorrow literally, but I'm saying in future, in the near future, that would happen. So we want to come so that we create awareness. Now this awareness is at 3 levels. The household level, the ordinary citizen, about what somebody can do, and also see what are the technologies available. So the entrepreneurs, the business community is coming with solutions. There's the energy solutions, there's the water sector solutions, agricultural sector solutions. All these solutions are available, because somebody may want to at least ensure that they use clean energy. And this will be available, demonstrated, to see what is the best that you can invest, so that you can also contribute to the environment. I'm happy I saw in the Standard newspaper today about eco-friendly homes. We want to move to eco homes, not friendly, but each and every home needs to be eco in that sense. Okay. And these are the areas where the people who will be exhibiting will be giving this information. So this is actually an expo for ordinary citizens, those who can make it on 13th and 14th. We are expecting to have large crowds.
Where is that going to be?
This will be at the KICC on 13th and 14th.
Great. Well, if you can make time to the KICC on the 13th and 14th, you'll be able to get more information about what climate change pertains, and also what you need to know in order to be a part of the individuals who are trying as much as possible to protect the environment as well as conserve it. It's an opportunity for you, especially people in the private and public sectors, to display your innovative climate change and environmental conservation technologies, and also allow for enhanced partnerships towards climate change resilient communities. So do make some time and go to the KICC on the 13th and 14th for the Save the Earth Expo that is going to be taking place there. On a parting shot, finally, what would you ask Kenyans to do in order to individually conserve the environment on a household level?
I would say, in summary, let everybody think Where did you, the first time you recognize the environment, if you find that it is worse than what you are seeing now, ask yourself, what contribution? Can you put in some greenery somewhere? And that will be a contribution, because you have participated in reducing the greenery. If each one of us can increase the greenery, we'll have made a contribution.
And these destructive rains, how prepared can we be for them?
There's a short term and there's a long term.
Yes.
And there's also the individual level, corporate level, national level. We need to be prepared. One thing that I would mention is that whenever there is a warning or there is a forecast as given by the Kenya Meteorological Department, let us look at it positively. As much as there might be a margin of error once, because all science has got a margin of error. But this information is given for the safety of the citizens. And if I can do some rainwater harvesting, if I can make a decision as a society, what we can do about the heavy rains so that we can conserve some of the water, that will be useful. But this discussion needs, I believe there's need for more discussion, because it is at individual level, at corporate level, and also at national level. There is need for more awareness so that we can be more prepared. Are we very prepared? Probably not at many levels. And I think it's because of lack of awareness.
Well, I think we are actually out of time, though there are quite a number of questions here. I guess I'll just have to forward to your office, where someone is asking, population isn't the issue. It seems that we actually have an issue with ourselves here in controlling our own waste and also conserving our environment. But it was an honor having you in the studio with us, and we'll be so glad to have you once again.
Thank you very much.
Well, we were speaking to Professor Nzioka Muthama, who is the chairperson of the Kenya Meteorological Society, and also, among other things, he's the chairman of the Meteorological Department at the University of Nairobi. Issues pertaining to climate change and how best we can conserve the environment and protect it from all the global warming effects. Well, this brings us to the end of the show. In case you have any questions, you can visit the Kenya Meteorological Department or visit him at the Department of Meteorology at the University of Nairobi. He'll have some of those questions answered for you. Alternatively, if you have any ideas you would like to attend that expo taking place at the KICC. I'm Joy Doreen Bira. This is KTN Sunrise Live. Do join us again tomorrow, a Friday, where we'll be having a little bit of entertainment. Do have a good day and God bless.